This ad had a 3x ROAS on over $1 million of ad spend. This is the easiest creative format to make, and it converts like crazy. You're probably missing this ad creative in your ad account. So every single year, I make a video showing you guys the top 10 ad creative formats that you need to be testing in your Meta Ads account. And that's exactly what we're gonna be getting into today. To find these ad creatives that convert, I actually analyzed over 20 brands' Facebook ad accounts, and I selected the top 3 performing ad creatives from every single brand. So let's dive into these 10 ad creative formats now, and we'll also go over that table more in depth in a bit. Ad creative number 1, and this is the easiest one to make. Literally anyone can make this in Canva. It's what I call the headline image ad. This ad creative is super easy to make, and it converts like crazy. In fact, this was by far the top performing static format of all of the ad accounts that I analyzed. And the trick here, of course, is all in the messaging. It's all writing on specific headlines and getting the headline that's gonna really attract your core customer. I actually find that a lot of brands don't do this right, and they spend a lot of time and money testing the wrong messaging. My hack here is to actually use golden nugget testimonials as your headlines. So look into those super special testimonials that your customers have sent you on your website and in the ad comments, and use those as your headlines. Golden nugget testimonials are not like this. These are really generic, really boring, and honestly, yeah, it does feel good when you get these type of testimonials from your customers, but they're not memorable. Golden nugget testimonials are like these and these. They're incredibly hard to fake. They can often be really specific, and they really stand out. The trick here that I use with the bigger brands that I work with is we will use this to test certain types of angles and messaging, and if we find success on it on these headline ads, then we'll turn that into creator content. Number 2, educational ads. Now, there are a few reasons why educational content works so well. And a few reasons why is that it inherently targets the top of funnel. So it's honestly the most type of scalable ad creative you can make. And it's also a content first approach. No one likes feeling like they're being marketed to or advertised to. And this honestly just feels like, hey, you're sharing information. Think of something that you can teach your customers. Think of something that they need to know and understand to be primed to buy your product. The really cool thing here is, of course, you can create videos and creator content here, but you can also do educational statics, which I have seen convert just as well. And number 3, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. It is, of course, the UGC single testimonial. And typically, yes, these are going to be problem solution oriented. Though over the last few months, when I've been looking at the top creative formats from month to month, I've actually seen a decrease in UGC compilations in the top performers and an increase in single testimonials. So that's just one creator having the spotlight. And another tip that I have here is I haven't seen as much success with the typical UGC creators. I've actually found a lot more success recently with more established creators, with more established influencers, especially those who are already creating content about your specific niche or industry. I know that not everyone can afford that, but it is really a worthwhile test if you have a great brief and a great angle, but it really is a worthwhile test. And that does bring me to number 4, creator ads. I really do want to underscore this because I have seen a significant uptick in working with influencers and creators over just your standard UGC creator. And number 5 is, of course, the founder story ad. Now, I've talked about this a lot, but the reason why founder ads are so successful is oftentimes founders are the ones that are best positioned to communicate the problem that they are trying to solve. They often have a very in-depth story about why they wanted to create the brand and how they were personally affected. And honestly, people really relate to that. People don't want to buy from the big unknown corporations. They want to buy from people. So help putting your founder front and center really is a strategic move to getting more people to convert on paid social. And the really cool thing here is I've seen top performing ad creative come from not only high production that features founders, but also low production, more UGC style oriented creative. And I've even tested out a few alternative formats that have worked out really well, like this slideshow ad right here, which can be easily created by any single founder out there. This is honestly just a must test for any brand. Number 6, No surprise here are statistic-based ads. Actually, when I was doing the analysis on headline ads, when I was digging a little bit more into the type of messaging strategies people were using, a lot of times they did have a statistic or numeral element. An interesting thing to note here is that several of the headline ads actually did feature statistics, and this is again something that I see that is carried over from the last few years that has really stood its ground and continues to perform. Now, something that I've said for a while is that the reason why statistics work is they speak to the logical point of the brain. If you use numbers, you get people to inherently trust you a little bit more psychologically. And especially if you're able to communicate the transformation, that's going to give them a lot more confidence in your product. And something that I've been thinking about a lot recently about why this works so well is especially if you are using the statistic to communicate the transformation or the amount of people that are experiencing that transformation, it's almost like a differently formatted before and after ad. Because that's what people are saying. They're saying, oh, okay, this is probably going to work for me because it worked for this amount of people. Now let's talk a little bit more about this table. Here are some of the really interesting things when looking at this data from more of a macro level. Number one, yes, UGC is still king. In fact, more than 50% of all of the top performers that I gathered were UGC. And again, single testimonials are that top creative format. And brands that were spending more than 7 figures per month, AKA more than $1 million per month on their advertising, they tend to spend more on UGC than on images. However, with that said, when approaching any brand, I don't just think in terms of, oh, should we use images or videos? It's absolutely something that you have to test all across the board, which is why I love making these videos every year, because I do think that it encourages brands to test things that are a little bit outside their norm. And again, I do think that all brands should be testing both video and images. And on the image side, when looking at this data, more than 70% of all of the brands had images in their top performers, and a lot of those were those headline ads. And many of those brands are taking the learnings from statics and images and then rolling those up into their video and creator content. Now, 7, 8, and 9 are all ad creatives that you've heard me talk about ad nauseum. So I'm not going to go super in depth on them, but yes, you should still be testing these in 2024 because they are still converting with many of the brands that I work with. And in fact, when I am beginning to work with a new brand or I'm beginning to work with a new product that is being launched, I am going through and I am testing all of these, especially these 3, because it's so often that we'll get in some initial traction or even just a creative winner from that batch. And this is of course going to be the features point out ad, the us versus them, and the before and after. All 3 of these are really bread and butter creative tests that all brands should be running. And what I think is interesting is they all tend to work for slightly different reasons, right? Some interesting things to note about the features point out ad. This ad format is absolutely not new to paid social. This is actually an ad format that David Ogilvy used in the print era. And when they were conducting research about why this ad format worked so well, they actually found that people retained a lot more of the information when using these call outs and arranging the information around the subject or around the product. And this is something that still rings true today. As for the us versus them, this is something that tends to work really well because these people are already sold on your product or solution, so you don't have to do the heavy lifting of doing a lot of education and doing a lot of convincing. You just actually have to position yourself and show why you're better than your competition. So it makes the selling a little bit easier. And I've actually found that with us versus them, especially for new brands and new pixels, this is often their first creative winner. And then of course, before and afters, I would actually say this is the ad creative format that I struggle with the most, getting brands to understand how important it is. If you can really communicate that transformation, it's an unfair advantage, candidly, at this point. And I just don't think many brands are doing it right. And number 10, new for 2024, I haven't really talked about this ad creative so much, and I've definitely never shown it in one of these videos, is going to be the text only ad. Now, this is the ad creative that I love testing with brands because I'm always so surprised at how well it works across several different industries. But this is also one that I want to throw to all of my B2B marketers and my info-based marketers, as well as service-based businesses, because this is one that I see that continues continues to crush for some of those more underserved markets, or at least markets that I personally don't talk as much about on YouTube. But again, I've seen it work for almost every single industry, and it's something that I've been really enjoying testing in my ad accounts lately. So there are a few different formats and ways you can do this. You know, I think we all saw this Adam ad, and I definitely think that it trickled down from there. But there are a few different strategies you can try with this, but as an ad creative format as a whole, it's definitely a must try. All right, blah. As you can see, this is a new space. I actually ended up moving from my apartment way sooner than intended. It's why I had to take a little bit of a break from YouTube. And I also just found out that my camera broke. So if the sound is a little wonky on here, forgive me. I'm using this mic with this camera, trying to keep it all together, but I am so excited to be making videos for you and coming back to YouTube in a much bigger way. We have some really exciting things coming up over the next few months, and I can't wait. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.